For most of this mission, everything looked calm. The crew spoke clearly, they laughed. The spacecraft did exactly what it was supposed to do. From the outside, Artemis 2 looked peaceful. But 250,000 miles from Earth, peaceful really just means nothing has gone wrong yet. It means 4 people are sitting inside a small capsule, knowing that if something breaks, they're on their own. There's no quick way home. No backup crew nearby. No easy second chance. At one point, a 6-minute engine burn decides everything, whether they reach the moon or end up on a path they can't turn around from. All the while, radiation they can't see is passing through them. And when it's time to come back, a heat shield they can't inspect is the only thing standing between them and a wall of fire on re-entry. And if something does go wrong, there's no time to wait. They'll have to figure it out themselves. This isn't a peaceful mission. This is Artemis 2. Getting to space is one thing. Getting to the moon is something else entirely. The difference lies in how you navigate the invisible geometry of gravity and motion. In the initial days following the launch of Artemis 2, the primary focus was on fine-tuning the spacecraft's trajectory. Orion doesn't just point at the moon and go. It does a series of engine burns, each one calculated to bend its path through space precisely. There's a perigee-raise burn, an apogee-raise burn, and then the big one, the translunar injection burn, about 6 minutes long, that locks the spacecraft onto a path toward the moon. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. A 6-minute burn and everything changes. You're no longer just in space, you're committed to a path that carries you all the way to the moon. From that moment on, there's no quick way back. The trajectory is locked in. In these early days, a few minor issues arose. There was a minor problem with the toilet system. A chemical reaction created a venting and filter issue. The crew managed it with contingency bags, and a partial fix was applied. In the grand scheme of things, small, but it tells you something about what this mission really is. Inside that capsule, 4 people are living, eating, sleeping, managing every biological need in a vehicle the size of a large SUV, hurtling through deep space. There was also an issue flagged about the launch abort system battery temperature, but engineers confirmed it was an instrumentation issue. The sensor reading it, not the battery itself. It wasn't a real problem, but it's a reminder that the team on the ground is watching everything, second by second, waiting for the one reading that isn't a false alarm. As Orion moved outward from Earth, something started to shift for the crew. They weren't in orbit anymore. The ISS, where humans have been living continuously for over 24 years, was left behind. The familiar blue marble of Earth began to shrink. There's a concept in spaceflight known as the overview effect, a profound psychological shift astronauts describe when they see Earth from space and grasp, on a visceral level, how fragile and isolated it is. Many who have spent time aboard the International Space Station have reported experiencing some version of it. Now imagine that effect multiplied by distance. Orion was heading somewhere that made the ISS look like it was just around the corner. And the crew understood that. By flight days 5 and 6, April 6th and 7th, 2026, Orion reached the moon. This is the point where the mission begins to carry real historical weight, something worth pausing to fully appreciate. At its furthest point, Orion and its crew reached 252,756 miles from Earth. The previous record for the furthest any human being had ever traveled from Earth was set by the Apollo 13 crew, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes, during their emergency return trajectory in April of 1970. That mission, as many of you know, nearly ended in tragedy. The crew survived because of extraordinary improvisation and an emergency route that swung them further around the moon than planned. That record stood for 56 years. Artemis 2 broke it, intentionally, safely, with all 4 crew members healthy and the spacecraft performing nominally. 252,756 miles from the only world any human being has ever called home. Think about what that number means in terms of isolation. At that distance, a radio signal traveling at the speed of light takes about 1.3 seconds to travel from the spacecraft to Earth. That's not a big lag in the grand scheme of space exploration, but it means that in a true emergency, every decision made on that spacecraft is made before Earth can respond. The crew is alone, in a way that is genuinely, physically, mathematically alone. And during the lunar flyby, the closest approach to the moon, the crew spent about 6 to 7 hours observing and photographing the lunar surface. They photographed over 30 specific targets. They worked in pairs. Weissman and Hansen observed Glushko crater together. And this is the part that stays with you. From their position beyond the moon, the crew witnessed a total solar eclipse. This wasn't the familiar kind of eclipse we experience from Earth, where the moon slips in front of the sun. It was the reverse. From Orion's perspective, Earth itself moved across the sun, becoming a dark silhouette against the light. The crew watched their home planet eclipse their star, and for nearly an hour, Earthshine, the soft glow of sunlight reflected off Earth, lit the jagged peaks of the lunar surface below, creating a scene unlike anything ever witnessed by human eyes. One of the crew described it as unreal. Picture what that scene actually looks like. 4 human beings hovering in deep space, watching their planet, the only planet any human has ever stood on, slip across the face of the sun. From that distance, Earth is a small thing, a marble, a pale dot, and it just happened to be passing between them and their star. There is no photograph that has ever been taken from that exact perspective with a living crew. And Commander Reed Weissman described something else about that moment. He named a lunar crater after his late wife, Carol. He said it was the pinnacle moment of the mission for him, not the launch, not the record, the moment he looked down at the moon and named a feature of it after someone he had loved and lost. That hits differently than anything a mission briefing can prepare you for. Now I want to talk about the scary part of the story. From the outside, Artemis 2 seemed almost serene. The launch appeared smooth. The crew spoke with ease during their media briefings. Inside the cramped Orion capsule, they bumped into one another and laughed it off. They exercised to stay healthy, kept to a routine, and even started their days with music. From our perspective, it almost looked like a long camping trip in space. But I want to walk you through what was actually happening under the surface, because nominal, in NASA language, doesn't mean easy. It means nothing went catastrophically wrong. It's easy to call a mission like this nominal. But in deep space, nominal is what it looks like when everything that could have gone wrong didn't. First, the heat shield. Orion's heat shield is the largest ablative heat shield ever flown. When Orion returns from deep space, it's traveling at roughly 25,000 miles per hour. During re-entry, the exterior of the capsule reaches temperatures approaching 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat shield has to absorb that. And here's the thing, it had never done this with a crew inside. Artemis 1 tested it, yes. But the thermal load from a lunar return is more extreme than anything experienced by Orion before. The Artemis 2 re-entry was, among other things, a live test of whether that heat shield performs the way it's supposed to, with human lives depending on it. Second, deep space radiation. At the distance Artemis 2 traveled, the crew was outside the protection of Earth's magnetic field. The Van Allen belts, the zones of trapped radiation that surround Earth, were behind them. At that distance, the crew was exposed to galactic cosmic radiation and potential solar particle events at levels that cannot be replicated in a ground test. The spacecraft has some shielding, the suits have some protection. But the honest truth is that we are still learning what sustained deep space radiation exposure does to the human body. Part of what Artemis 2 was doing was measuring that. Third, the psychological dimension. 6 or 7 people living on the ISS have 460 cubic meters of pressurized volume. Orion has about 8.95 cubic meters of pressurized volume. 4 people, 10 days, 8.95 cubic meters. The crew laughed about constantly bumping into each other in their media conference. But 10 days in a space smaller than most walk-in closets, moving away from Earth at speeds that make rescue impossible, with radiation you can't see and a heat shield you can't inspect. That takes a particular kind of psychological fortitude. And fourth, re-entry itself. When Orion comes back from the moon, it doesn't come back the way the space shuttle did. There's no runway landing, there's no gentle glide. The capsule hits the atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour and rides a fireball down. The crew experiences up to 3.9 Gs, nearly 4 times normal gravity, during peak deceleration. After 10 days in microgravity, their bodies have been adapting to zero gravity. Their cardiovascular systems have been reconfiguring, their muscles have been losing density, and then, suddenly, 9 Gs. That's why the crew spent significant portions of the mission practicing with orthostatic intolerance garments, compression suits designed to push blood back toward the brain and help the body handle the sudden return to gravity. Because for an astronaut coming back from deep space, re-entry is not just a physics problem, it's a biology problem. This mission was scary in the way that genuinely impressive things often are, not because it was chaotic or out of control, but because the margin for error was real, and the crew walked that margin with calm professionalism. By flight day 7, April 7th, Orion was on its way back. The first return trajectory correction burn was completed. 15 seconds, a small thruster firing that from the outside sounds almost trivial, but that 15-second burn was calculated to within fractions of a degree to put Orion on exactly the right path for a splashdown off the coast of San Diego. Get the trajectory even slightly wrong, and the capsule either skips off the atmosphere or comes in too steep. Koch and Hansen monitored systems during that burn. The crew had exited the moon's sphere of gravitational influence. Earth's gravity was now pulling them home. There was a call with the crew of the International Space Station. The recovery ship, the USS John P. Murtha, was already heading toward the splashdown zone in the Pacific Ocean. On flight day 8, the crew had what was essentially their last media day. They answered questions about what it was like to live in the compact Orion cabin, about the deep space views, about the solar eclipse they'd witnessed. They posed for a group photo with their zero-gravity indicator, a small stuffed figure they'd brought called Rise. There's something about that detail. 4 astronauts, 200,000 miles from home, posing for a photo with a stuffed mascot. It's both deeply human and quietly extraordinary. By flight day 9, April 9th, 2026, it was the final full day in space. The crew woke to Lonesome Drifter. The focus of the day was practical: stow gear, remove cargo netting, install crew seats for re-entry. Hansen and Koch led the cabin configuration work. The seats needed to be in the right position, locked down, secured, because when that heat shield hits the atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the last thing anyone wants is loose hardware. They reviewed splashdown procedures. They got the latest weather briefing for the Pacific. They conducted demonstration tests for off-nominal scenarios, meaning they practiced what to do if something went wrong. And at some point during that last day in deep space, the 4 of them shared a group hug inside Orion. I keep coming back to that image. 4 people in matching suits, in a capsule smaller than most people's bathrooms, after 10 days in space, 200,000 miles from home, on the eve of a re-entry that no human crew had attempted from deep space in 54 years. And they hugged. If all goes according to plan, Orion will return to Earth on April 10, 2026, splashing down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, California. Recovery operations will already be in motion. The USS John P. Murtha and U.S. Navy teams will move in to retrieve the capsule and crew. Within a couple of hours, the astronauts are expected to be out of the water, undergoing medical checks, and on their way back to Houston. And if everything works the way it's designed to, it will look almost uneventful. The heat shield will endure the 25,000-mile-per-hour re-entry. The parachutes will deploy in sequence. The trajectory will bring Orion precisely where it needs to be. The orthostatic garments will help the crew handle the sudden return to gravity. Everything that needs to work will work. The mission objectives are clear. Validate Orion's life support systems in deep space, prove navigation at lunar distances, demonstrate that a crew can operate effectively beyond Earth orbit, and collect critical data on heat shield performance. And if NASA engineers describe the mission afterward as nominal or better than expected, that will be an extraordinary statement. Because nominal, in this context, doesn't mean simple. It means that a mission sending 4 humans 250,000 miles from Earth on a new rocket, inside a new spacecraft, through an environment we cannot fully simulate on the ground, went exactly as planned. It means everything held. But it also means every risk was real. Radiation exposure, heat shield performance, trajectory precision, life support reliability, human physiology in deep space. None of these are theoretical. Each one is a point where things could go wrong. The line between nominal and catastrophic in deep space human spaceflight is incredibly thin. It's sustained by meticulous engineering, intensive crew training, and the hardened institutional discipline that NASA has spent years rebuilding. If Artemis 2 succeeds, what it will prove is simple and profound. That NASA has found that margin again. On the last full day in space, April 9, 2026, as the crew of Artemis 2 was stowing their gear and preparing to come home, Commander Reed Weissman was asked what the mission meant to him. He kept coming back to the moment at the moon, the crater he named Carol, the eclipse he watched from the far side of the world, the view of Earth, small, blue, impossibly alone in the darkness, with 4 people watching it from 250,000 miles away. There's a famous photograph from the Apollo 8 mission in 1968 called Earthrise. It showed our planet rising above the lunar horizon and changed how a generation saw Earth. Artemis 2 has the potential to produce its own version of that image, taken with modern cameras from a new distance by a new crew. The mission isn't over yet. The crew isn't home, not yet. But if everything goes the way it's designed to, 4 astronauts will return carrying something no human mission has ever brought back before. Somewhere in a NASA archive, there will be photographs of Earth taken from nearly 250,000 miles away, images that until now have never existed. That's what Artemis 2 is meant to be. Not just a test flight, not just a rehearsal, but a moment where humanity, quietly, carefully, and with just a hint of fear, proves to itself that it still knows how to do this.